Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome back to Every Version Ever. Today I'm joined by Conrado Falco to talk about one of the most unique versions of Snow White that I've ever seen. Blancanieves is a Spanish black and white silent movie, but not from the early days of film. This was made in 2012 in the style of a movie from a century ago. I've been seeing this one all over the internet since I started looking for versions of Snow White to watch for the podcast, and I was definitely interested, but I held off at first because I had read that it had a bad ending. I was wrong about what that ending was. It was still bad, just in a completely different way than I was expecting. Anyway, I was not initially thinking about covering it in this round of adaptations, but it kept coming up so often, especially looking at certain versions from 2012, because there were oddly a lot of versions from 2012. But this one just kept popping up, taunting me. It looked so unique, I finally decided I had to watch it, and Conrado immediately came to mind as the perfect co-host. So, my curiosity has finally been satisfied. And yes, this has a terrible ending. But even though I really hated that, there was still so much about this movie that I somehow ended up loving, that despite the complete downer of a finale, I'm actually really glad I finally watched this one. Okay, so had you ever seen this before?
I had not. And I think you're the one who suggested it, right? To me.
Yes.
I know we've been looking for something for me to come and talk about for a while, so
Yeah, well, this one is one that I kept seeing because I'm doing this princess miniseries, and I kept seeing this one when I was looking for different versions of Snow White.
hmm.
And it wasn't one that I was initially like planning on doing, but it kept popping up and it just looked so interesting. Even just the poster, it was black and white and
Yep.
there's just something really striking about it. And I read a little bit about it and it said it was a tragedy, which is not usually my cup of tea.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that, so I was caught a little bit off guard by the ending. I
Oh,
didn't know
okay.
what to expect. Yeah.
Well, I had read that it was a tragedy, so it wasn't one that I was like, I need to do this, but it kept coming up and I was just so intrigued. I was like, I should just do it. Even though it's a
Hmm.
tragedy and I don't usually like tragedies, I should just do it. So as I was looking through it, I was like, this looks like one that Conrado would be into. So you were the first person I asked if you were interested.
Oh, great. That's great. And you were right to do so. I mean, you knew like black and white Spanish movie, let's call Conrado, he'll know what's up with that. And I had heard about this movie before. And the moment that you brought it up to me, I was like ready to talk about it because I had been wanting to see it. But one of those things of like you hear about the movie, then you like, you need an excuse to like get to it sometimes.
Hmm.
So it was perfect. The interesting thing about this movie is I first heard about it around the time that it came out I guess it must have been in 2012 because it was picked as the Spanish submission for the international Oscar that year. You know how every country kind of like picks one movie to represent them at the international
Yeah,
category for
yeah.
some reason. And so Spain at that time picked this movie and it sounded so like such a weird thing to do, oh, like a black and white, Snow White, silent movie all of a sudden. So that was intriguing. And at the same time, this was the year after, do you remember that movie, The Artist, the silent black and white
I
movie?
haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so
I
if you
remember seeing a
remember,
trailer.
that was a big hit and that won all the Oscars. So it was like a big Oscar thing. So this kind of like, I feel like this movie got a little bit of its thunder stolen because there had been a big silent movie hit
Hmm.
just a year before, so that I
Yeah.
feel like when it came out, it was a bit of like, oh, poor Snow White movie. Like, if it hadn't been for the artist, maybe it would have been a bigger deal or whatever. It felt like a little bit like been there, done that. And so I think that's why I didn't get to it at the time, but I'm really glad we watched it for this because it's really, I thought it was really good and I thought it had a lot of cool stuff in it.
Hmm.
So yeah, let's get into it. Tell me what you thought.
I liked it until the end, but I always knew that was
Mm.
going to be the case because I don't really like movies with sad endings.
So you were preparing yourself.
Yes, although it did not end the way I thought it was going to. I mean, we'll get there, but it ended completely different to how I was expecting.
Oh, interesting.
I
I'm
was
interested to
expecting
hear.
death, like pure death. This was not death. This was like worse than death.
So you think this was even? Yeah, this is pretty. It's pretty tough
Yeah,
when you really think about it. Yeah.
yeah.
You don't even have to think about it, honestly. It's tough. Like the
Yeah.
ending, and like I said, I was not expecting it. So I kept thinking of like, how are they going to turn this around? Like, how are you going to get a happy ending out of this? And then, of course, there wasn't one. And I was like, oh, I guess
Hmm.
that was that.
I think if there had been a happy ending, I would have loved this movie.
Mm-hmm.
As it is, I like it. I
Mm-hmm.
can't love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably won't rewatch it again right away. Though I will say I'm not completely turned off the idea of rewatching it because up until the end, I did like it.
Yeah.
Like there was so much in here to like. I just don't like how it ended.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We can get into it if you want to go in order. Or what? I don't know. Where do you want to start?
Well, I had one random trivia thing that I was going to mention before we get into the movie because
Great.
I knew that 2012 was like the year of Snow White, but I didn't realize how many Snow Whites came out. There was
That's
at least
right.
five,
Oh,
which is
wow. I thought there was only three, or, because there's this one, obviously.
yes,
And then there's the two that I knew about.
Mirror
Um,
Mirror
Mirror Mirror
and
and
Snow
Snow
White and the
White and
Huntsman.
Huntsman. That's right. I remember those two.
Yes.
And then this one. I didn't know that there were more.
There was also a really terrible low budget one from the Asylum, which I've already done for the podcast.
Of course. And that, of course, is the classic thing they do where they want to,
Yes.
take advantage that there's a Snow White movie coming out. And so they do a cheapy one. Okay, got it.
Yes. And then another one I'm gonna assume is another low budget one that I had never heard of until last night when I was researching, called Snow White: A Deadly Summer, which is a horror movie inspired by
Huh.
Snow White, which I had not heard of that one until last night. So
Okay.
I'll have to add that to my like I had an idea of doing like a bunch of horror princess movies in one podcast because
I
I
feel
don't
like
know how
there
much I'm going
are
to want to
a lot.
dedicate a whole podcast to each one, but
That's right. Are you a horror guy?
no.
You don't strike me as that. Yeah, yeah. I thought you
No.
were. Yeah, you wouldn't be.
Again, it's the thing with the good ending. Horror movies rarely have
That's
good
right.
endings.
That's right.
If there was a horror movie that had a good ending, maybe I would like people call Jurassic Park a horror movie sometimes. I like Jurassic
Mm,
Park, but it has a
right.
good ending. So,
What about the movie Get Out? Have you seen that one?
no, I've heard about it, but I hadn't heard what the ending was like. I
Oh,
liked
okay.
Nope,
Oh, great.
which is by the same director, so
Yeah. I think you would like
maybe.
Get Out as well. It has a good ending. It has like a happy ending, which I
Okay.
think is one of the things that made it such a popular movie, in my opinion.
What about Us? Is that a good ending or not?
I think that's no, that's a little more
Okay.
complicated. Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought because I'd heard a little bit more about Us, but I didn't fully hear how it ended. And
Hmm.
just the
Hmm.
trailer I saw, I was like, nah, that doesn't look like it's for me.
Well, that's hilarious. So you're the guy who's like looking for the spoilers. You're like, spoil me right away so I know if I want to watch this movie or
Depends on
not.
the movie. Depends on the
Yeah.
movie. Like if it's a movie that I'm excited to see, like
Hmm.
Superman came out.
Hmm.
I was excited for Superman. I avoided
Right.
all spoilers. I didn't want to know what was happening.
And you know that that's gonna have there's not gonna be a sad ending to
Yeah.
Superman, like come on. So
Yeah.
okay, so you were safe for that one.
Yeah. But yeah, those that was the five Snow Whites, at least five. Could have been more, but I was just so surprised when there were five different versions of Snow White all in the same year.
It really does happen like that every now and then. There's a year when there's like two, three, four like movies with of the same thing. I remember there was did we have like a Peter Pan moment or a Robin Hood moment? It happens every now and then, doesn't it?
Probably. And sometimes it lasts for more than a year because there was a couple
Hmm.
years where like every big studio was trying to do some kind of a Bigfoot Abominable Snowman movie.
That's right. That's right. A lot of animated movies with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but for whatever reason, studios get off on a kick of just keep redoing the same idea over and over again.
Right.
Which is fine for me for this podcast because it gives me a bunch of
Right.
stuff to do. I've never done a whole series on Bigfoot movies. Maybe I should.
There's probably a bunch of them.
I used to love Bigfoot when I was a kid. I thought that
Oh,
was,
then you should do it.
yeah, I haven't watched all of the Bigfoot movies that came out, but I've seen a few of them.
Hmm.
There are varying levels of good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah, my one trivia item for this movie was what I just told you before we started recording that made us hit record right away because of when I told you that this director, Pablo Berger, is also the director of the animated movie Robot Dreams that came out, was it last year or maybe a couple years ago?
I think it
Um,
was 2 years ago, but it came to the States last year because I included
that's
it in
right.
my most recent animation ranking.
hmm Yeah, which actually, believe it or not, I haven't seen it yet, even though I've wanted to ever since I heard about it. And our mutual friend Rachel Wagner loved that movie,
Hmm.
so and
That
I
that was
just kind of
one.
missed it.
Uh, talking about endings again,
Hmm
that one was one. It didn't have a bad ending, but it had an ending that I didn't love. It made me want more.
Mm,
Like I'm not going to spoil what happened, and it's definitely not to the level of this movie with something tragic, but it wasn't a perfectly happy ending, which I think is one reason why a lot of people liked it.
hmm
I wanted more.
Right. Well,
I felt
you're.
like it could have kept going.
Oh, interesting.
It
So it
ended at a
wasn't.
point where I thought it needed to keep the story going,
Oh,
and it wasn't
interesting.
fully happy yet.
Okay, so you wanted a little bit more happiness. Okay, got it.
And now knowing that this is the same director, I'm like, maybe that's just a thing with him. Maybe he doesn't like perfectly happy endings.
Right, right. Well, I wouldn't call this ending
Uh,
perfectly
and
happy.
this
It's
isn't
pretty
happy
far
in
from
any
happy.
way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the other one might be a little bit more.
The other one is
Um,
not tragic. It's not really even sad. It's just not happy. I mean,
okay.
it depends on how you look at it. I don't want to tell you what happens, but it depends on how you look at it. Like
Mm-hmm.
some people might interpret it as a happy ending. I didn't, but some people
Mm-hmm.
might.
Okay.
Well, I suppose we can get into this movie.
Yeah, definitely.
This one, it is so different than any other Snow White I have watched so far for this series. Like
Okay.
so completely different. It modernizes it to a point. It's like early 1900s. So it's more modern than most Snow Whites go. But it also
Okay.
sets it in Spain and
Mm-hmm.
it's revolves around bullfighting, which is like, how do you get this? Like I guess I know now because the director had seen like something with bullfighting dwarves and decided to make
Ah.
a movie about bullfighting dwarves and Snow White.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay,
But
that makes sense.
it's such a random mashup of ideas, but it works and I love it.
It is a little bit random. I was thinking that maybe there was like, because it is a silent movie as well. I,
Hmm.
I expected that maybe there was like a big trend of bullfighting silent movies in Spanish history that I didn't know about, and it was like a, famous genre, the way that we have Westerns or whatever, you
Mm.
know. So I was thinking maybe there was something like that, but this thing with the bullfighting dwarves makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, it's such an interesting idea, but the way he did it, I really like it.
Hmm Definitely. Yeah, and the scenes with the dwarves were some of my favorites, I gotta say.
Hmm. Well, it starts with a bullfighter named Antonio, who is married to a woman named Carmen, who is pregnant. And at the very beginning of the movie, we're already into a bad start because
Hmm
he's gored by a bull, and the shock sends her into labor. And they are both rushed to the hospital at the same time, and she dies, giving birth to Snow White, or Carmencita, who
Right,
becomes Carmen, like Carmen Jr., I guess.
right. Carmencita, yeah, that's little Carmen basically. So yeah.
Hmm.
And right, and the dad does not die, but he ends up being kind of paralyzed and he has to be in a wheelchair after that, right?
Yes, and there's this nurse who, while he's like being wheeled in, she's like gushing over how lucky Carmen is because he's rich and handsome. And then as soon as Carmen dies, she's like fidgeting with his ring and like smirking to herself. And like when they were both rushed to the hospital at the same time, I was like, oh well, we're gonna have an orphan Snow White. That's different. But then as
Hmm
soon as she started fidgeting with his ring, smirking, I was like, oh, okay, well I see where this is going.
Right. She doesn't waste any time. I thought actually this is what I was thinking of. When I was watching the movie, for some reason, at some point, I thought that the nurse was kind of like scheming to kind of like kill him or something. And then he only ended up paralyzed. So I guess I understood. But for some reason, I thought that the nurse had a role either in not allowing him to get healed fully or in killing the mom. But I don't think that's true, right? Maybe I was just looking into like I was
I don't think so. I didn't see anything that made me think that she was behind anything that happened.
Yeah,
I
and
think
I
she
gotta
just
say,
I think she just kind of
yeah.
bled out.
Okay, okay, because I was a little bit confused with the cross-cutting in that scene because like you're saying, they both rushed to the hospital. We're cutting from one operating room to the other and back and forth, and I was having trouble knowing where this evil nurse was at any
Hmm.
particular moment. And also, I gotta say, if there's something that I would change about this movie personally, I know that for you it would be the ending. For me, it
Hmm.
would be I think the evil stepmother nurse character and the actual mother look a little bit too similar. At the beginning, I was confused who was who a little bit when they were cutting back and forth to them. And then later, there's a scene when we have flashbacks or like she looks at a locket with her mom's picture on it. And I was a little bit like, wait, isn't that the stepmother? Like, so that was my personal problem that was keeping, I was having a hard time keeping track of those two at the beginning. So that was probably why I got confused too.
It could have been on purpose because there was a moment where Antonio looks up at the nurse and he sees his wife and
Okay,
like they
so
fade
there's
between the
that
two.
too. Okay, there's that too. So that played even more so into my confusion, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, he is left paralyzed and he ends up marrying the nurse whose name is Encarna,
Hmm.
and Carmencita is raised by her grandmother. And
Right.
for the first chunk of the movie, I mean, she's functionally an orphan because he doesn't come to any of her events. There's a
He
scene of,
sends gifts, but that's it.
yeah, there's a scene where she's like praying for him to come to her first communion, but he doesn't. I think it's implied that he might have been there in a car, but then the car drives away. I
That's
wasn't
right.
sure if that was him.
I think that's the implication. I thought that's what was happening as well.
Hmm. And then, just to add insult to injury, the grandma dies too.
Oh my God, I know that scene. I was like, this girl can catch a break. Her grandma dies, I think, on the day of the communion, if
Yes,
I'm not
they're
mistaken.
they're having like an after party and they're like dancing, and then the grandmother
And she
like
dances too much and she
collapses.
dies. That's it's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a lot. At that moment when the grandma died, I thought the movie was gonna be like a real downer, like it was gonna be like one calamity after the other, and it kind of is in some ways, but that's one of the heavier parts. I think it has a more balanced,
Hmm.
kind of like thing after that.
Yeah, they do a good job of making it not too much of a downer until the end. Like
Hmm.
they'll have like really sad things happen, and then they'll have some moments of levity that make it a little better,
Yep.
even though ultimately it's not going to be better.
But they gave us hope at least at some point.
Yeah. They give us hope only to take it away.
That's right.
So now she has to go live with her father and stepmother. And I really like the house that she moves into. It's very
Hmm.
huge and kind of dark and gloomy, but it looks so cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool kind of like Spanish ranch sort of situation that they
Hmm.
have going on. Yeah, it's a great house. And I think overall, all the, production design, costume design, cinematography in the movie, it's all pretty beautiful, I think.
It is.
And it's really well done.
And location too, because apparently this house is in Seville,
Hmm.
which that caught my eye because it reminded me of The Barber of Seville, like the opera.
Right,
So I
right.
decided to just look up the city. And I did
Hmm.
not realize that this is where they filmed a lot of the outdoor shots for Naboo in Star Wars Episode 2.
Really? I did not know that, but that I'm not so surprised. I haven't been to Seville, but I know that it's a very picturesque city, and
Hmm.
I also know that it's one of the big, kind of like bullfighting
Mm.
cities in Spain, or it used to be at least. And it's also kind of like a center for flamenco music, sorry, which
Hmm.
which is also used a lot in the movie. It's, the kind of music that the grandma's dancing to when she dies, and that's
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, the main place that they filmed was for Star Wars was the Plaza de España. And like when I looked up Seville, I saw a picture of that place and I was like, that's Star Wars. That's such an iconic castle.
Right. So that's in the second one, the Attack of the Clones, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes
That's
sense. All
the
of the
palace.
romance sections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have a moment where the stepmother tells her that the second floor is off limits to her, And I was at first I was thinking this is like a Beauty and the Beast type thing because that's what
Right.
happens in Disney's Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah,
But
but the moment she says that, oh, this girl's gonna go to the second
oh,
floor,
of
like it's
course.
just a ticking clock at that point.
Yes. And another moment where you see that she has brought along her pet rooster, Pepe, and I was like,
Mm,
as soon as the stepmother saw this, I was like, well, Pepe's not long for this movie.
yeah, definitely. And that is another kind of like sad moment of like
Hmm.
the whole thing with the rooster. What happens? The rooster gets away, the stepmother catches him, and then she feeds him to her at
The
dinner or
rooster
something like that.
lasted longer than I thought he was going to because he doesn't get killed right away. There's a scene
That's
later
right.
on where he escapes and goes upstairs, and like I feel like he actually lasts for a few months because I think there's a quite a long time because when she follows him upstairs, she finds her father, and
That's right.
eventually
That's
they
how she ends up
reconcile.
upstairs because the rooster escapes
Hmm.
and she follows him and then right and then she reconciles with her dad and they have a very tender moment and the dad teaches her how to bullfight basically.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think several months pass because you have like the calendar pages flipping away, and
Yep.
it's not right away, but at
Mhm.
some point the stepmother figures out what's going on and cooks the rooster and feeds it to her and says, well, she doesn't say, but she heavily implies that her father is going to be killed next if she goes back and
Mhm.
sees him again.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that's another tough scene and she, like it happens to a lot of people who end up, eating animals to were their pets or whatever, that she gets traumatized and later on there's a much later scene where I think she's with the dwarves and they serve her chicken and she can't eat it or she has like a similar moment,
Hmm.
right?
The I think I don't think it was chicken. I don't know what it was, but it was a small bird because it was served whole, and
Oh,
she
that's
she
right.
about
And it
threw
reminded
up.
her yeah, and it does definitely remind her of the rooster, so
Yeah.
I guess she doesn't eat any poultry after this. It's like she's off poultry after this traumatic experience, I guess.
Yeah.
I also wanted to bring up, I forgot, and the scene, one of my favorite moments in the movie, which I think it's full of kind of like very cool shot ideas or transition shots or like very playful like images and stuff throughout, kind of like visual stylings. One of my favorites is after the grandma dies and we cut to one of the, I guess, maids in the house. She takes her white communion dress and she dumps
Oh
it
yeah.
into an inkwell so that it comes out, dyed black
Yeah.
because now she's in mourning. I thought that was a really clever, cool way of, telling the story through images in the silent movie that reminded me of the classic silent movies of the era. So
Hmm.
I thought that's one of my favorite parts or favorite touches.
Yeah. There was a lot like this movie. Yes, it's a silent movie, but it does have like subtitles and shots of like how they put like captions on a screen by itself.
Hmm.
It has
Hmm.
some of those, but there was not as many as I expected. A lot of it is told visually, which I really liked.
Yeah, it's a very I appreciated that decision a lot to try to do as much visually and not rely so much in the intertitles, I think is what those are called,
Hmm.
the title, the dialogue cards, I guess.
Hmm.
And from what I understand, the Robot Dreams is also kind of a silent movie, right? Or there's very little dialogue in that one as well.
I'm pretty sure there's no dialogue.
Oh, there you go. So I guess this guy has a
There's sound
son.
effects. Like
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
like full Foley. Like there's everything that they interact with makes it's not just music like this movie is.
Right.
So
Okay.
it feels like a real world. They just don't
Hmm.
talk.
Okay. So, well, yeah, I guess it sounds like Pablo Berger has kind of like this visual and sound but no dialogue thing going on, which, honestly, I think it's fun to have that kind of like a director out there who's into something different.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Like as much as I didn't like the ending, I
Hmm.
liked the movie up until then, and
Hmm.
I liked most of Robot Dreams. So I'm
Hmm.
thinking maybe I should look into more of his stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what other movies he might have made, to be honest. I just know that I recognized the name when I saw it pop up on screen.
Yeah, no, I did not realize that was the same person. That was great that you pointed that out.
Yeah, it was one of the first things I noticed when the title, directed, written by Pablo Berry came up. I was like, that name sounds familiar. Where have I heard that? And I Googled it right away, found Robot Dreams, and I was like, oh, that's it.
Hmm.
But anyway, so where did we leave off? I guess she reconciles with the dad. The stepmother gives her the rooster, cooks the rooster and feeds it to her.
Hmm.
And after that,
Well, there's also a scene in here somewhere where I think it's implied that the stepmother is cheating on her father.
oh, with that guy who's kind of like he looks like some kind of officer or chauffeur or something, right?
I think he's supposed to be the huntsman because isn't he the same
Right.
guy who, yeah.
Yeah,
So I
definitely
think,
that guy.
and then there's the scene of the stepmother hunting also. So I'm thinking that
Uh,
he's supposed to be the huntsman.
Definitely got that he was supposed to be the huntsman, but I didn't. Yeah, I guess she is kind of cheating on him with him. I guess it's kind of the implication. I didn't think of that part of it.
I mean, there was that weird scene where she's like riding him around the bedroom like
That's
they're
right.
in
That's
their
right.
underwear or something. It was very odd.
Yeah.
Like it's not like fully like spelled out like yes, she's cheating on him, but like what else what else is
Well,
this weird
right.
scene supposed to mean?
She really is that she's really painted as that type of like very, very superficial,
Yeah.
self-interested woman that like,
Yeah.
she's just all about like the money and the fancy things and the jewelry and you know, all of that stuff. So yeah.
Hmm.
But it's fitting for the evil stepmother character.
Yes. No, she's like I don't want to say she's like the most evil stepmother I've seen, but like she's way up there with the
Yeah.
evil stepmothers in the different versions that I've seen.
It's interesting. I don't think there is a mirror in the movie. Is there like the mirror equivalent? It's one of the few things from Snow White that is not carried over.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Right. I was trying to think because I think the movie, despite being so different and having this whole like Spain silent movie bullfighter thing,
Hmm.
I think it sticks pretty closely to the beats of the original. I don't know about the original, but the like the Snow White story that we
Yes.
know. Um,
Yeah. The first
and
half is mostly setup for what
mhm.
we know for the Snow White story.
That's right. I was a little bit surprised of how much setup there was. I gotta be
I
honest.
was too, because it was like an
Mhm.
hour in when we started actually getting into the Snow White story,
Yeah, that's
which, I
right.
mean, it's fine. It works for this story, but I
Hmm.
was just kind of
Yeah,
surprised at how long it took to get there.
same here.
But yeah, I didn't think of it, but you're right. I don't think there is a mirror.
I was waiting to see if there was going to be, but I feel like that's maybe the only thing that's in the commonly known story that's not in it because even there's even a scene with the grandma where the grandma pinches her finger and there's blood and she doesn't go into the whole like I wish my daughter was like white as snow and the
I
with
didn't even think of that with the drop of
but
blood scene, but you're right.
they make just a little bit of a hint of it.
Yes.
So I was surprised that there was no mirrors and so many other things were in it.
Yeah. I think they mostly stayed away from anything that was magical
Definitely, yeah.
up until the end, which felt kind of magical in a bad way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess so. I was curious of how to interpret that moment, but yeah, yeah,
I'm still not 100% sure of how to interpret it, but I mean, we'll get there when we talk about
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
I think after this is where we got to the point where I was like, I know I had already known that this was a tragedy, so I was expecting the stepmother to get away with everything, and I was like,
Mm.
I almost want to shut this off because I'm afraid she's not going to get any comeuppance. Thankfully, I was wrong
Hmm.
about that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
At least there's that.
yeah, but like after she's fed her own pet, she's like locked in. I don't know if it was supposed to be a dungeon or a basement, but it basically a dungeon, and the
Hmm.
father is like wheeled into a corner,
Hmm.
and then you have like a montage slash time skip of her doing laundry out in the field, and she transitions to an adult
Hmm.
and gets the news that her father has died. And then we get a flashback showing the stepmother killed the father. She shoved his wheelchair down the stairs to kill him.
That's right. Which a classic, that's a classic telenovela thing to happen. Like, oh my God, how many
Hmm.
people die in telenovelas because they're pushed down the stairs in a wheelchair? So yeah,
uh, I haven't watched much for telenovelas. The closest I've come is watching Ugly Betty,
right.
which is kind of an American telenovela.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, that's one of the tropes of that genre. So yeah,
From what I've seen of like clips of telenovelas, I'm not surprised. They really
yeah,
like to do over the top dramatic things.
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, this is the point where we start getting into the actual Snow White story that we all know
Hmm.
because her father has died. They have, I guess it's a funeral scene. I don't know. Everybody was like taking pictures with the body.
Right. That was another scene that really stuck out to me. The scene where the body is kind of like sitting in a chair and everybody who comes to the funeral is taking pictures with it. And I wondered if that was a kind of like a Spanish tradition of the time or something like that.
I've heard
Or
of that happening, but from what I've heard, it's not that it's not true, but it's like one
Mhm.
of those things where people act like it was a common thing, but it wasn't as common as people think it was.
Right, right. And it also made me wonder, maybe in his case, because he was a celebrity, he was from what I understand, a very
Oh, that's
celebrated
right.
bullfighter. So maybe there is a little bit of the
It
kind of
could have
like
been.
novelty of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet you're right.
Yeah, but that's definitely another scene that really struck with me, of like,
Hmm.
um, people taking pictures. And then of course when Carmen, the Snow White character, she's the last person we see take the picture, and when she does it, she breaks down crying, because she's actually mourning her dad and like
Yeah.
some of the others people.
Hmm. And then we have Snow White sent to pick flowers for his grave, which I think is in some versions. I think that's an actual thing that happens.
Oh, really?
I'm not 100% sure because I haven't seen too many versions yet, but I feel like I've seen this plot point before where
Hmm.
Snow White goes to pick flowers for her father's grave. Not 100% sure, but I feel like I've seen this before.
Hmm. And is that when the huntsman is sent after her?
Yes.
Right.
The huntsman, like, I think you were right about him being a chauffeur because I think he drives her to, because it says it's very far away.
Hmm.
So they drive to wherever this is, and she's picking flowers, and then he sneaks up to kill her. And of course, this is a tragedy, so we can't have a kind-hearted huntsman who has pity on her and lets her go free. This guy is actually intending to kill her, except he
Right.
stops mid-strangle to kiss her, and then she's able to hit him and escape.
That's right. Yeah, that was
Briefly,
that was a lot, that scene.
yes. She escapes briefly and then is trying
Hmm.
to cross a river, and then he is able to get to her, and it seems like he drowns her, and then he just leaves her in the river.
Hmm.
And
But
this part was the first part where I was like, this is pushing the bounds of believability a bit
mhm,
because she's there like the rest of the day, and then she's pulled out that night and given mouth to mouth, which I feel like shouldn't work after she's been in the
right.
river for a whole day.
Yeah, yeah. You're
But I was
probably
like, ugh,
right.
it's a fairy tale, I guess. I'll just go with it.
No, that's a good point. But yeah, she's given mouth to mouth by one of the dwarves, right?
Yes, I can't remember their names. They flashed on screen briefly, but they're not really referred to by name very many times, so
No, they're
I
not.
and I tried looking up the different characters, but they weren't listed on Wikipedia, and
Oh, really?
they didn't have pictures on IMDb, so I was like, I don't know which is which. So I
Yeah.
kind of just settled for calling the one who gives her mouth to mouth the hot one.
I was gonna say the same thing. He's the handsome dwarf. So yeah. Which I kind of liked because it felt like they were conflating kind of like the dwarf and the prince characters
Yes,
together, which I thought was a nice touch because,
yes.
why not?
Yeah, I've never seen that before, and I really liked that touch.
Hmm.
I wish it had led to a happy ending.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
thought
wanted
I
them
thought
to
it
be
might at
together.
some point. Yeah, definitely agree with you there.
So yeah, he saves her and brings her back to his troop. He is one of the bullfighting dwarves,
Hmm.
and it seems like she has amnesia. She can't remember who she is, so she just goes along with them and goes to their next show.
Mhm. And I gotta say, their show seems pretty entertaining from from what we see of it. I thought they had a couple of really fun bits in the show. I particularly like the one where it's two dwarves and a horse. One of them
Yes.
is like standing as mounting the horse, and the other one is the horse's head. And then the
Uh-huh.
bull is coming for them, or the calf, I guess, because they really are, fighting calves runs towards them and they kind of like split
Hmm.
I thought that was a really fun moment. That was my
It
favorite part
was.
of their show.
Yeah. No, when they first started doing the fight, I was like, "What is going on? That thing is almost as tall as they are." Like, and then I
Right,
realized, oh
yeah.
wait, that's a calf.
Yeah. Which I think it makes sense. That's probably how they did it in real life, if especially now that you tell me that the director was inspired by something that he read about.
Yeah. But at some point, one of the dwarves is trampled by this calf,
Yeah.
and everybody is laughing at it. And I was like, "Is this a bit?" Like, I wasn't sure because this is a calf.
I had the same feeling that what is going on, and one of the there is that this was confusing to me too. There is one person who is also short. That I don't know if he's part of the dwarf act or not. Who seems to be a little bit more in charge and kind of like who tells Snow White, "This is great. People are loving it. Don't go help him." When the guy is being trampled. Am I correct that he's part of the group or something?
I thought he was. I'd have to
Mhm.
go rewatch it to make sure, but I thought it was one of the other dwarves that told her that the audience loves it. Like, don't worry about it.
That was my impression as well. I think, okay, I did say that they would change one thing about the movie. The other thing I would change is to have a little bit more of a definition of which the dwarfs. I think that's something
Hmm.
that, for example, the Disney movie does really well, is to give them each a thing and you know which one's which,
Hmm.
you know? I think this movie, there's a couple ones. There's one who is either dresses as a woman or identifies as a woman. It's not really said, but there's one of them who.
That's the only one whose name I remember because it said Josepha.
Right. So
So I remembered
Josefa,
her
that's the
name.
mhm. So she is very identifiable because it's the only female presenting one of the dwarves.
Yeah.
And then there is the handsome one that we talked about, and then there's
Hmm.
this kind of like evil scheming one. I think those are the three that I
Which I
can.
think is the guy who she saves. So I was like, why is he so upset about this?
Right. No, wait, it can't be because he tells her not to save the person, right? Isn't he standing next to her? So, but case in point, we are confused about this this
Yeah.
this moment of which dwarf is which, and I feel like maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah. No, I like they did run together. Like I
Hmm.
remembered Josepha, the hot one, and the angry one. And then
That's
I
right.
don't know, I couldn't tell you anything about the other three.
Yeah, so that would be my note regarding the dwarfs in this movie. I think they could have defined them just a little bit more because we
Yeah.
did spend like enough time with them for us to have a little bit of time to get to know them a little, like their
Hmm.
thing, and also we don't need like for them to be hugely complex characters, but just to know which one's which.
Yeah. It would have helped if they'd put their names on screen for more than like 2 seconds.
That's right, and they don't refer to them by name very much because
Mm-mm.
obviously there's little dialogue and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe each of them could have like a more specific thing in the show or something that could have been like, oh, that's the horse dwarf and that's the one who does this and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have helped. But yeah, she saves the guy using her bullfighting skills that she has no idea why that she has these skills.
But they are deep within her because her dad taught
Hmm.
them to her, and so she's able to save not only save him, but like she doesn't really fight the calf, but she kind of like leads the calf back away and like kind of saves the day.
Hmm. Which leads them to ask her to join them. And
Hmm.
because she can't remember her name, they decide to call her Snow White because of like the story, and then they lean into that for like marketing purposes.
That's right. And I thought that was interesting that in the universe of the movie, the story of Snow White does exist.
It does, which I
So,
didn't realize until that moment. I was like,
right.
because they had referenced other fairy tales before, but I
Hmm.
I just assumed that Snow White wasn't one of them until this moment. And I was like, okay, well that's interesting that Snow
Yeah.
White exists and her life is playing out quite a lot like
Yeah,
Snow
exactly
White.
like it. Yeah. And that scene was also funny, the one where they lean into it saying like Snow White and the seven, bullfighting dwarves, even though it's only six of them.
Yes, because at first I was like, am I miscounting? Because every time it had the group of them on screen, I was like trying to count. I was like, is there only six? And then at that moment, when they're like looking at the sign, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, you have one of the dwarves looking and like looking specifically at the seven and then looking around and like counting on his fingers.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. There is only
hmm
six dwarves.
Yeah, I think that it was funny.
And then this is also the point where I started thinking that there was something up with the one dwarf. Maybe it wasn't the guy she saved, but one of them has something against her, and I'm not sure why.
Right. Yeah, definitely. The one that we identified as the scheming
Hmm.
or like, evil dwarf or whatever you want to call him. I guess evil's a little strong, but
It probably is a little strong because he does kind of redeem himself in the end.
he
But yeah, for
does.
most of this, for whatever reason, he has something against her. He's like glaring at her from a distance.
hmm I
Like,
suppose he's kind of the grumpy analog or
that's
something,
kind of what I
like
was thinking.
yeah. So he's the one who like doesn't really like her. He doesn't love that she's joining the act and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah. And at some point after this, they eventually become famous. They gain a lot of notoriety, and then a bullfighting agent comes along. And at first he's like he wants to work with her exclusively, and then like she gets him to like sign everybody, but he somehow tricks her into signing a lifelong contract. Like she can't
Which
read apparently, which I think is just from the amnesia because like I feel like she
yeah.
like when starts remembering who she is, like she's seeing words. So I think it was just an amnesia thing that she couldn't read.
So she forgot how to read as part of the amnesia. That makes sense.
Hmm.
I was struggling to know whether or not this agent, because I feel like we see him earlier in the movie when her dad is still alive, and I couldn't tell if he was a character that had appeared before, or was a completely new agent.
I thought he looked familiar, but I wasn't 100% sure.
Okay, that was my impression too. So I think he probably is the same character. He appears before if we both had that thought. And then the what do you make of the exclusive lifelong contract
I was
thing?
like, how is this legal?
Well,
Because
right,
like
of course.
she can't read, or she says she can't read. She's
Mhm.
also going by a pseudonym because Snow White is not her actual name. And then she
Right.
signs by scratching an X on the contract. So I was like, how is this legal?
Back in the day, people got away with all kinds of things, I guess. But I was wondering why do they make that a part? Because it doesn't really play that much of a role in the rest of the movie,
I think it
unless
comes into the end
the
because
end,
he's the
right?
one
That's
at
what
the
I was.
end.
Right. So I guess that makes sense that it's kind of like that's how she ends up in that position, in that horrible position that she ends up in.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
But now that they're working for him, he says that they're going to Seville. So now we're going back to the stepmother, who is basically living it up, pretending to be a grieving widow. They say it's been a year since her husband's death, so I'm assuming that Snow White has been missing for a year, or
hmm
Carmen.
Well, she thinks she's dead because she sent the guy to kill her, right? The huntsman equivalent, the chauffeur.
Yeah, I did think it was odd that nobody mentions Carmen.
Yeah.
Like, because
And
she's
and
being
also,
interviewed for a magazine, and they just talk about her husband being dead for a year.
yeah, nobody really pays attention. It's almost as if the people don't know that Carmen exists, like in the wider world.
I suppose it's possible that they don't. Because, like, she didn't live with them for like half of her life. I don't know what age it was that her grandmother died, but she was raised
hmm
by her grandmother in a completely different location. So
Right.
maybe they just didn't know that Antonio had a daughter.
Yeah, and especially since he was kind of like separated from her by the stepmother, I think that would make sense that it was never a formal announcement or anything.
Hmm. So yeah, she was interviewed for this magazine, but this magazine also does a story about Snow White and the bullfighting dwarves, and
hmm
she recognizes her right away, and of course is furious. And I think she accidentally kills her boyfriend slash the
Oh,
huntsman.
right. Yeah, I guess she does.
She like goes to confront him and like slams a statue over his head, and then he collapses, and then she looks horrified, and then she dumps his body in the pool so it looks like he drowned.
Yeah, she's kind of losing it at that point.
Yeah. And then in here, we also get several scenes of Snow White with the dwarves, and they're making it very clear that if not both of them, at least the hot dwarf is falling in love with her. I, I'm not 100% sure if she's fully returning his affections, but he's obviously in love with her, and I think she
Yep.
really likes him either way.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's the scene where they're like looking at the stars and everything, right?
Yeah, there's like fireworks.
Yeah, I got that impression as well. Yeah.
I think that they almost kiss at one point, but they don't.
Hmm.
And then it's also becoming very obvious that the one guy just straight up hates her. Like he's switched from being like annoyed, like looking at her like glowering from a distance, to like he straight up hates her because when they get to Seville, he switches the signs on the bull's pen. So instead of fighting the calf that they normally fight, she has to go up against a bull named Satan.
Right.
So
Which
it's
is never
like
good.
no. So it's like, I guess just trying to kill her, maybe? I don't know. If he's not trying to kill her, he's trying to injure her badly.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
then somebody in the crowd recognizes Carmen at some point and says that her father would be so proud of her. And then that sort of triggers her memory, and she starts to remember who she is, but ends up like frozen in the bullfighting ring. So then she's like basically staring down this Satan bull, and the bull doesn't seem to like know what to make of her just staring at him. And then she like turns and like tries to walk away, but then suddenly remembers that her father told her never to turn her back on the bull, and she turns around just in time and starts waving her cape. And
Hmm.
the audience thinks that this is all part of the show, so they're all delighted by this act. Not act, but they think it's an act.
Hmm.
And then I wasn't exactly sure what was going on here because like word is starting to spread in the crowd as to who she is. And at some point, everybody in the crowd is like waving their handkerchiefs, which apparently is the sign that they want her to pardon the bull.
Right. I didn't know that, but that's the impression that I got from based in the movie.
I'm
Did you
not,
know this?
I,
Did you
I'm
look it
not,
up or
I don't
okay.
know because I'm not too familiar with bullfighting. I know
Hmm.
the bulls usually end up dead, so
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense that there's a way to pardon the bull. I don't know. I'd never heard of it before, but
I mean,
it
I'm
doesn't strike me as false.
yeah, and I'm glad there is because the bull didn't really do anything to like be in the fight, so
No,
it's
yeah.
kind of nice to spare his life.
There's also a scene while this is all happening where her father is like looking down from heaven to her. And I'm not sure if they
Mm.
were meaning for that to be literal or a figment of her imagination.
Yeah, unclear. But it works either way, I guess,
Yeah.
in the context of the movie.
Hmm. And meanwhile, her stepmother has been here the whole time.
Right.
I think
Because
she
she
was,
sees the article and she makes a point to be there,
yeah.
especially after killing her lover.
Yeah. I think she's hoping that she's going to get trampled, but she has a backup plan. She has a
Hmm.
poisoned apple, and it's not like a magically poisoned apple like in most fairy tale versions. There's a brief scene of her like injecting it with a syringe full of poison.
Right. Which, yeah, that makes sense. It's
Yeah. She briefly runs into the dwarf that hates Carmen, and I think this is the point where this dwarf maybe is starting to regret his actions. She moves past him and calls him Tom Thumb. And I
hmm.
like when that happened, I was assuming they were going to team up, but he didn't. So
Right.
I think the implication is that he's maybe regretting what he's done.
Yeah. And I think well, we're getting to it, but I think he might be the one who ends up spotting her
Yes.
later when after the poisoning happens, right?
Yeah. She gives her the apple, but then they're interrupted by the guy who'd recognized her previously, and he throws her father's hat. And I thought
Hmm.
at that point I thought that she had dropped the apple, but I guess she hadn't, because
Hmm.
later she takes a bite of it and collapses in the middle of the bullfighting ring.
Right. But that is when they're kind of celebrating, when she's already won the fight and
Yes.
everything, and they kind of like, she kind of takes a celebratory bite of the apple and she
Hmm.
collapses.
Yeah. And then the one guy recognizes the apple as what the stepmother had been holding, and he points
Hmm.
her out, and then all of the dwarves chase her out of the ring, except the one
Hmm.
who loved her. He stays behind holding her body.
Right.
And it seemed like they were gonna like straight up murder her because they're all like holding
Yeah.
stakes and sharp objects as they're chasing her around underneath the
Hmm.
stands where the bulls are kept. But
Yep.
then I guess one of them must let out Satan. And it doesn't show it, but the implication is that she gets gored by the bull.
Yep. And that's her comeuppance. And I
Yes.
think it's one that, kind of feels of a piece with at least the original fairy tale and the kind of things that happens in those.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the all the different versions have different terrible fates for her. I think in the original Grimm's version gets she's forced to wear like magical
Oh, that's right, the
shoes that make her
shoe
dance to
thing.
death, which
Yeah.
is kind of odd to think about in the context of this movie since the grandmother dances to death. That was the
Maybe that's why that happens. Maybe there's another kind of like conflation or like, remix of the story.
it could be.
Right, but yeah, but of course, it's not literally what happens in some of these versions, but
Hmm.
a similarly gruesome
Hmm.
fate for the stepmother.
Yeah. And then the crowd kind of does like a Spider-Man 2 thing with Carmen. Like
I guess it
the
is,
scene
yeah.
after the train where they're like carrying his body, like what
Hmm.
somebody says, careful, he's a hero. It was like they were doing that, but with Carmen, which I
Yep.
really liked that scene. And at this point, I was expecting, like, I thought she was dead. And I was
Hmm.
expecting her boyfriend to take a bite of the apple and they both go out Romeo and Juliet style. And I think I would
Oh,
have preferred that actually.
yeah, that wouldn't have been terrible.
Like it still would have been sad, but I wouldn't
All
have
things
had as much of an
considered,
issue
yeah.
with it. Because it, it ended up being so much darker than that because we're not done yet. She's not dead. She ends up in a sort of a sideshow, like a circus freak show, run by the guy who made her sign the lifelong contract.
Right. And going along with the thing of like the story of Snow White exists within the story of the movie, um, he puts her in a crystal case like they do in the fairy tale, and he puts her as a sideshow where people can come up to her, and I suppose they're probably paying like 10 cents or whatever to kiss
Hmm.
her, like in a Snow White situation, and then what was really disturbing to me on top of it all, which it already is very disturbing and sad, is that then they do this weird thing where like every now and then it's kind of like going to the Disney World to the sword in the stone thing where like you try to
Oh,
take the sword
yeah.
and then all of a sudden one person does get it and it's like a big celebration. So for every like I don't know, probably like 30 people that kiss her, one of them, she kind of like they do a little thing where her body props up and it's almost like, oh, that's true love. This one worked, which I found very disturbing.
Yeah. And like they make it obvious that she is not dead because well, the first thing you notice is that her hair is much longer. Like she's had short hair for most of the
Hmm.
movie because her stepmother cut her hair when she first got there. So she's had a
Yeah.
very short haircut for the whole movie.
You know what? I did not put that together and it makes sense. Okay, so I am getting the ending a little bit more than I used to. I because I was thinking when they prop her open and they have this whole thing going on, I'm like, how are you gonna do this with a dead body? This is gonna stink pretty soon,
Yeah,
But
no,
then
that's what like that would have been disturbing in its own way, but it's more disturbing, I think, to know that she is still alive, and I think she is aware. Like it's like she's in a coma.
yeah, she's in a coma basically, and because at the end, her the handsome dwarf, the one who loved her, he sticks around at the they close down the carnival. It's late at
Hmm.
night. He goes up to her, and he kind of like has a sad, tender moment with her, and the movie ends with her shedding a tear, which lets us know that she's probably aware, like you're saying.
Yeah. So that's like so much worse than her just dying. I
It
almost
is
wish that she had
really,
just
it's
died.
yeah, yeah. It's the more you think about it, the worse it gets.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I like as much as I liked most of the movie, I did not like the ending.
No, no, that was really tough.
Yeah.
and I think I totally understand and I feel for you in the sense that even if I had known that it had a sad, tragic ending,
Hmm.
I would not have predicted this ending. So,
Oh,
I yeah.
no, I expected she was just going to die. Well,
Hmm.
the first thing I expected was that the stepmother was going to be victorious and just get away with everything, which I'm glad I was wrong about that. But I
Yeah.
was expecting her to die.
Hmm.
And the fact that she didn't die is worse in this situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it's like they've traded death for a fate worse than death. Which, like, yes, this is based on a fairy tale, but they've, for most of the movie, they've gone for a more realistic idea of the story. So it doesn't,
I guess.
it
Yeah, I guess
feels
so.
magical in a bad way that she's still alive and still looks healthy. She's still aging. I don't know. It's such a weird ending that is very unsatisfying.
Yeah, I don't know if I would, I guess I do know what you mean by realistic, but I would also say that the movie, despite, you mean, I did not know it was going to have a sad ending, and the movie itself, how it was going, it caught me by surprise. I did not expect that we were heading into such a sad direction at the end. The movie didn't strike me as that because it did have, amongst all of the sad things that were happening to her, there was moments of comedy and there was like levity, and the movie was so kind of like clever in what it was doing and enjoyable to watch that I
Hmm.
didn't expect it to go in that direction at the end.
Yeah. No, like I really liked the movie
Hmm.
to a
Hmm.
point.
Yeah, I think we are in similar positions. I think that I also really liked it for the most part, but I also didn't love it. And you know what? Talking about it, I do think that the ending has something to do with it.
Hmm. Yeah, if they had given it a good ending or even just had her fully die, I think I would have liked it a whole lot better. Like I still wouldn't have been happy with the end if
Hmm.
she had died, but I don't think I would feel this bad about what happened to her.
Yeah, this feels like a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they wanted to go in a more darker direction, but they just took it a bit too far. Kind of like when the huntsman was going to take her out. Like it would have been bad enough that he's actually trying to kill her, but then they added in like the kissing on top of that and then drowning her.
Hmm.
It was like they just kept adding more
Yeah.
tragedy into it that wasn't
I guess
necessary.
I guess the movie does have that. There's a thing with the grandma, the dad, the chicken. Like, it I guess maybe I should have seen it coming that the movie really likes to pile it on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, other than that, I liked it. I can't fully recommend it to people, but if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't seen it and you now know what the ending is going to be like,
Right.
maybe watch it because, like, it has merit. Like, it's not a
Hmm.
bad movie. It just doesn't have a great ending.
And it is definitely, well, actually, I don't know if definitely you would know better than me, but it strikes me as probably one of the most inventive and original adaptations of Snow White that you're gonna find out there.
I would say so. Like, I've seen some that went off in their own direction with the story, but
Hmm.
as far as like sticking to the story of Snow White and updating it in a
Hmm.
unique, more modern way, this is probably the closest. There's another one that I recently did for Christmas in July that was a modern take on Snow White, and
Hmm.
it was more like they took the recognizable elements of Snow White and then kind of mixed them up and did their own thing with them. So it was still Snow White, but it wasn't the full Snow White story that we all know. This pretty closely kept all the beats in the correct order that you expect. And in that respect,
Hmm.
this is probably one of the best modern updates to the story.
Yeah, and I did appreciate that the movie did kind of like stick to most, if not all, of the story of the fairy tales,
Hmm.
plot points, which I appreciated.
Yeah. Even to the point where things we thought of talking about it, like the grandmother dancing to death. Like, I guess that is from the original story. I almost feel like they did that on purpose because that's such a
Hmm, hmm.
specific thing.
I didn't think about that until we mentioned it now,
Yeah.
but I do feel like they were looking to do that kind of thing. Like even if we're not gonna do it literally the way that it's said in the story, let's find a place to do like a little Easter egg or something to it. And I'm sure that if I watched it again, I feel like I would probably find a mirror equivalent in there somewhere, you know, or something like
I
that.
wouldn't be surprised. I'm
Hmm.
trying to think, right? Nothing's coming off the top of my head, but there is a lot packed into this movie. There's a lot of details.
Yeah.
So I bet there would be more stuff to find in the background, even watching
Hmm.
it a second time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't fully 100% recommend this movie, but I do recommend it if you know what you're getting into.
I think that I am in the same boat. I think if you are at all feeling adventurous, knowing what you know, now that you've listened to the whole sh show,
Hmm.
um, give it a shot. I think that you will appreciate it, if
Yeah.
not outright enjoy it.
Yeah. It's a cool, unique, modern-ish early 1900s update to the Snow White story with a fully
Hmm.
unique setting. Like I
Yep.
really love the bullfighting
Hmm.
setting. That is such a cool twist on the story.
Yeah.
Not
An
an obvious one.
unexpected.
Like a
Yeah,
lot of times
exactly.
people think of like obvious settings, but like who would have thought to put Snow White into a bullfighting setting? That's such a cool idea.
Only a Spaniard, I guess.
I guess so. Well, that will probably be all for this episode. I'm sure we'll be back for something else in the future. But until
Yeah.
then, would you like to let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, totally. So you could probably find me. I am on Letterboxd. If anybody listening to this uses that social media, if you search my name, Conrado, you'll find me, I'm pretty sure. And that's kind of the only social media that I'm actively using these days, and definitely the only place where I'm writing about movies these days. So if you want my movie opinions outside of this podcast, that's probably the way to go. Other than that, I don't know, you could listen to old episodes of the Criterion Project, which is the podcast that I used to host with our friend Rachel Wagner, where we talked about movies in the Criterion channel. So that's still out there, and we did a lot of episodes. We did like 3 or 4 years of that. So there's a lot of backlog of that if you want to check that out. But other than that, I guess Letterboxd is it.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining me for this one, and we'll see you again sometime for another movie.
Yeah, totally. I love coming on this show. So, yeah, and I'm glad that you reached out to me about this movie because I'm glad I watched it because it had been on my list for a long time.
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of other unique takes on stories like this that we'll find and we can talk about.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Thanks for listening to Every Version Ever. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. My link tree and all of our links will be in the description below. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.